Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to another episode of What's in a Performance, the series where I take scores, performances, recordings, break them down, analyze them, and discuss what pianists do in order to achieve the performances and recordings that they produce. Today we have one of the most incredible performances there are on YouTube, and that is Vladimir Horowitz playing Schubert's Impromptu No. 3. And let me tell you, Schubert's Impromptu No. 3 is incredibly beautiful on its own, but the way Horowitz plays it, it's just simply breathtaking. I just don't think that there are adequate words to describe how he plays his impromptu aside from going to listen to it yourself, which you should definitely do. Link for that is in the description because I'm going to be stopping a lot to talk about things. But yeah, there's not much else to say other than let's get to the video because talking's done and playing. Alright, here we go. Schubert's Third Impromptu performed by Vladimir Horowitz. So already, I think the first thing we want to note, right, coming like right off the bat, since I spent so much time talking about, rounded hands, like the arch in the hand and like curved fingers and stuff like that, Horowitz has always been the counterexample that people give me when I talk about these things, because as we observe right here, he plays with incredibly flat fingers and an incredibly outstretched hand, almost to the point where the arch is no longer present. But I would note, again, that despite that, you can still see a tiny bit of arch on his hand. And I would even say that the reason why his hands are so flat here is because he's aiming for a very specific tonality, aiming for a very specific sound. So first and foremost, let's take stock of what he's actually doing. We can hear this very delicate pianissimo. There's a very soft undulation and the color changes very, very delicately as he moves from note to note in the melody. And how does he do this? He does this by playing very, very close to the keys, by not lifting the fingers all that much to maintain that sort of pianissimo feel. And how else does he do this? Well, also by creating a very gluey texture. The texture that he's creating is very gluey, and the way that he accomplishes this is by playing with flat fingers. If I play a scale, like a C major scale, for example, with curved fingers and with high finger lift, it would come out like that. You would hear the articulation in each and every single note. If I try to play at the same tempo with flat fingers and without finger lift, it would come out more like... I can't even play at that tempo because it's too difficult to do with flat fingers, right? Obviously, WattKeys would help something like this, especially with different notes and broken chords, but you get the point, right? It already sounds more detached, it sounds more gluey, and it creates more of a pianissimo feel, which is what he's going for. That slight pull, oh my gosh, I'm gonna go back and listen to it again. Yeah. So that slight pull, right? Right, you feel the almost like resolution of that chord, and that resolution of the chord is like, there's a sense of release that comes from it. There's a little tiny moment of catharsis, right? And in that moment of catharsis, this is why breathing is so important to how we play. It's in that moment, it's almost like a little sigh that you give at the end of like a long day, at the end of like a tense sentence, right? A tense phrase, and that's why you get the little bit of a pull. Excuse me for my poor playing, I'm sight reading here. That's where these sorts of pushes and pulls come from. And we can't see very clearly what his right pinky is doing because it's blocked by the rest of his hand. But I would wager that if he's not lifting the fingers higher to get that sort of phrasing and articulation, he is rolling slightly into it with a little bit of wrist, right? Like this way. He's pushing slightly into it like that. And make note of the left hand as well. The left hand is very flat, right? And how is he playing the left hand? Just moving up and down like this, right? Moving up and down using arm, but starting from the key, right? So he's not starting from up here, he's starting from the key. He's just letting his arm weight drop into the keys. The pull again. You can hear how the color changes, right? Simply from like this tiny little inflections in the dynamics. That's such a sweet E, right? Or I should say F flat. You expect, right, here in the score it has hairpins written there. So that's where the phrase is leading to. You almost expect that F flat to be a little bit more triumphant, to be at the top of the phrase. But Horowitz here, I think is an artistic liberty, right? Because different people phrase this differently based on recordings that I've heard before, and how I would play it would be maybe a little bit different too. What he does is almost subvert that sort of anticipation, and he pulls back, right? He pulls back again. Think in 3 layers. We have 3 things that are going on right now. We have the top voice, which is the melody line. Then we have the bottom, which is the bass notes. And then we have the broken chords in between. And so these are layered in this manner. And each one of these is moving in its own way within the pianissimo dynamic range with the top voice on top. Even though the score says pianissimo, you can't just play pianissimo and flat all the way through. Then you would get no changes in color, you would get no changes in tonality, you get no changes in touch, right? And it would be a very boring piece. And so this is essentially how you work a slow piece and sing very expressively, right? You almost hear like sweetness in the phrases, right? That as Horowitz is playing. Again, the drop, right? And there's the left hand, right? For a moment, the left hand comes up. If you've come to my streams or like watch any of my previous videos before, I talk a lot about how do we direct the attention of the ear. What do we as the performer hear in the score, and what do we want the listener to all of a sudden pay attention to, or our ears to pick up on as we're playing? Obviously, we want to hear the melody, but also changes in other voices, changes in general, right, attract the ear. We as humans are attracted, visually to movement and hearing, auditorily wise, things that we are unexpecting. So if you play the entire phrase like this, right, listen to my left hand. If you play the entire left hand at the same dynamic, which would be acceptable because he's voicing everything correctly, we would not like really hear what the left hand's doing. We would not hear this D flat come through, and then we would not hear this phrase like da, da, dum, bum, right? We would not hear that. But because he draws attention to it with this, it comes up in dynamic, then we are now attuned to the rest of the phrase that he's playing, and we hear that complement the melody a lot more. Now we move into like a mezzo piano, right? Almost like mezzo forte. Again, immediate pull. Push into tempo. It's like you can almost feel yourself breathing and growing with the music and then like pulling back. It's again, the breathing that's so important. And just look how the entire time, how close his fingers are sticking to the keys and how flat they are, right? He's even playing really close up to the top of the key to give himself like perhaps a little bit more control with the stiffness that's inherent with him playing so close to the top. He probably has a feeling or texture or this dynamic that he's playing at is easier to achieve for him up here with flat fingers than it is down here, where people typically would recommend that you play. And now we're starting to push the dynamic, right? The left hand stands out in sharp contrast to how the left hand's been going the entire time before. And you can almost feel the bit of weight going into the keys. You can see his arm come up, right? Move up and down as he pushes in a little bit. Ah, so cool. The hand, again, comes up more. Now we get the close-up of the hands. Again, we see how he's just dropping the weight on the wrist, right? Yes. So that last phrase right there, that last... I've talked about this before, the idea of combining several techniques to get a certain sound that we're going for. And so the thing that I pointed out earlier was lifting the fingers, right? So I'm gonna play it higher up on this octave just so that I don't have to slide all the way over here. You see how Horowitz is controlling the broken chords by just lifting the fingers like this. And it changes depending on how loud it's getting, but for the most part, it's just all finger coming in like this. But the top voice, the melody line, he'll voice either by dropping a little bit of weight like this, by lifting the finger a little bit more, or he'll do what he's doing with the left hand, which is drop the whole hand into it, the whole arm into it. And it changes depending on what he's going for. Those polyrhythms were incredible. The 3/4. Oh, yeah. Look how high the left hand is coming now. The fingers, right, as he's going into that forte, into those accents, into those sforzandos. Right, you hear how, again, the movement between the dynamics, da-da-da-dum, right? He's leading to the next note, bum, ba-da-da-bum, right? He's going somewhere. And because he's going there, you feel the pulse quickens slightly, right? The notes don't rush towards that, but it drives towards it. Again, he's playing at the front of the beat. As I talked about before, the beat is not just a singular point. It's an abstract 2D object, right? And you can play at the front of it, you can play at the back of it. And if you play at the front of it, it feels like you're moving forward. And so he moves forward into that next note. And it's also a little bit louder, right? Right, there's a curvature both to the tempo and the pulse and the rhythm, and there's a curvature to the dynamic, which is of course what he's manipulating here, and a slight change in texture. You can feel and hear a little bit more weight. Each note is a little bit more da-da-da-dum as opposed to da-da-da-da, right? Like much more smooth, like da-da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-dum, da-da-da-dum, right? The texture changes. Right now we're like almost listening to two voices, right? It's almost like a stretto, right? Where both voices, the left hand and the right hand, are like on equal terms. Ooh, that pull. Ooh. Oh, look how flat his hands are, right? Now he's using a bit of finger too, right, to do all this, like... Honestly, this changes, right? Again, talking about combining techniques. Sometimes his fingers lift up like this, and combine with a little bit of arm. Sometimes it's just arm going down. And now the wrist drops below the keys, right, to enable him to drop more arm weight into him. That trill, though. A little bit of coming up. I'm watching a lot of his left hand. I almost don't want to be analyzing what's going on, right? Because it's just so soothing. Like the way, when this is masterfully played, you're taken into the world that he's in, you know? I can almost draw the arch, right? Right? Literally, the dynamics that he's playing with follow the arc of the note. It's very interesting when this happens in music, right? Sometimes it's not necessarily the case, but more often than not, it is. The way that the dynamics and the way that the melody is structured on the page mirrors how you should play it. And this is what you have to play with as an artist, right? As a pianist, you have to learn how to hear it in your head first, and then you have to go and apply your techniques to see how you can replicate that. So you hear the bottom two layers aren't necessarily always like clear cut like this. It starts off, right? The bass is down here and the layer in between is here. And then throughout the theme, right? Throughout the phrase, the bass slowly creeps up. Sometimes it drops down, like with this C flat, it drops all the way down to the point where we almost cannot hear it, right? And then it comes back up, da, 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 right? You feel a tiny bit of that ebb and flow, a little bit of that direction in it, a little bit of that like push and pull in the tempo that's not worked in the main melody line and not in the bass, but it's in the layer in between the broken chords. Let's listen to it for this iteration. The bass comes down, right? The broken chords are staying consistent, but again, a little bit of that dynamic variation. Voicing the top note in the left hand, right? Switching of the fingers so he's able to connect. The pull right there. That pull, right? These pulls almost herald, right? These pulls almost herald like the incoming like question marks, the next phrases, right? To release his attention. Again, drawing the attention to the. Trill with the 1 and 2. I was surprised how well he got it because it has a tendency to be a little bit heavy when you're trilling 1 and 2. Just a testament to how good Horowitz is, you know? You feel how much weightier it's becoming, right? You can even see how his hand is dropping a little, and you can see how when he's playing, right, there's a little bit more of that jitter from the weight that's going. Look. All these notes as they're getting much heavier, more of that forte. Why is he using weight here, not coming from above and not lifting the fingers, striking the keys with more articulation? It's because he still wants to maintain that smooth texture, right? The texture in this entire piece stays relatively the same. It's all very, very smooth, very, very long legatos, long sentences, long flowing letters, long flowing words. And so in order to do that, we accomplish that with weight so that it doesn't get harsh, it doesn't have a bite to the tone. And so even when it gets loud, Horowitz is using weight. When it's soft, yes, it's like dispersing the weight of the attack from lifting the fingers by playing with flat fingers. Ooh, that's such an interesting contrast. Making the middle voice very chunky here, or not chunky, but like blocky, so it stands out. Drawing emphasis to the D flat in the left hand. So even with like these repeated broken chords, your ear wants to hear something. And as the pianist, you get to a certain extent, right? You get to decide what the ear is drawn towards. Most of the time, the note that you're playing towards, as we hear throughout the rest of this piece as well, is the top note, right? So we hear this most clearly here at the end with. Right, I'm exaggerating a little, but that's what he's doing, right? He's drawing attention to a certain note so that he can phrase that note, he can voice that note above the rest and give even something like this a little bit of direction. I'll back it up a little so we can work our way into the final chord. The ritardando, right, the pull, and the final sit into the keys. And he's done. That was quite the performance, honestly. I know I probably sounded very repetitive because I mentioned the same things over and over again. And I don't know, did I contradict myself at any point? I don't think I did. But this piece is really, really beautiful, and for good reason. And Horowitz's performance is probably one of the most famous out there, also for extremely good reason. You can close your eyes and you can see the imagery. That's how good it is. Man, that was beautiful. And yeah, I hope I play this someday as well. Alright, and that about does it for this video. I know a lot of people hear Horowitz's interpretation and they just wonder, how does he change colors at this place? What is he doing to make things different, or why is it so beautiful? And I hope that this video at least helped break some of that down. If you're learning this piece, there's a lot to experiment with. There's no one silver bullet that can produce the interpretation that's unique to you, but hopefully my analysis of what Horowitz does can give you some ideas on what you can apply to your own playing. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. If you would like to see the full-length version of this video, because I cut a lot of things out to make it more suitable for YouTube, you can do so at my Patreon. Link for that is in the description down below. Or if you would like to support this channel in general, you can do so via Buy Me a Coffee or by getting WattKeys merch. And definitely check out my live streams on Saturdays where I do a lot of this analysis live, except on your guys' videos to help you guys out with your own playing. If you'd like to see me do this analysis right now, you should click right here. Or if you'd like to hear me play, you should click right here. But anyways, till next time everybody, peace.